Good morning, Impression Ho. It is a Thursday, the 23rd day of October, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter to get to the stories that matter today. The Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI, will open its investigation to the public via Livestream beginning next week. Retired Supreme Court Justice Andres Reyes, who leads the ICI, stated the move guarantees transparency amid public anger regarding the alleged 500 billion peso infrastructure fraud. House Speaker Boji D fulfilled his promise to release a statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth to the public amid widespread anger over rampant corruption. D's SALN disclosed a net worth of not more than 74 million pesos and listed 16 relatives currently holding government positions. And we will dive deeper into the gravity of corruption and possible solutions to end it. Stay with us because former Senate President Frank Drilon and People's Budget Coalition co-convener Ken Abante will join us later. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda. The public will now get a front row seat to the investigations into alleged widespread corruption and flood control projects. This, as the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI, is set to live stream its hearings. More in this report.
Starting next week, the Independent Commission for Infrastructure will live stream its hearings, a move long demanded by lawmakers and the Filipino people. The announcement was made by ICI Chairperson and retired Supreme Court Justice Andres Reyes during the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights hearing.
We don't have the facility and we don't have the rules of procedure, but we will already shorten the procedure in spite of no rules allowing us. We will now go on live stream next week.
Since September 11, the ICI has been holding closed-door hearings. Now, the public themselves will witness the unveiling of evidence against allegedly corrupt officials. Former DPWH Secretary Babe Singson revealed the depth and breadth of corruption in infrastructure projects, calling it unbelievable.
The legal process that we have to follow is so tedious. Bago po may makulong, ang haba ho ng proseso. As compared, you may want to consider, as compared to the two gold standards of anti-corruption, which is the ICAC of Hong Kong and the CPIB of Singapore.
Lawmakers lauded the ICI's move to live stream the hearings. According to Las Piñas Representative Mark Anthony Santos, with the live stream, there will be no more speculation. Akbayan Representative Chel Jokno said it is the public's right to know what happens in the hearings since they are the direct victims of corruption. With this, ML Party List Representative Laila De Lima said the people themselves will become investigators. Bicol Saro Party List Representative Terry Redon agreed, saying it's an important transparency measure.
Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro likened private citizen John Santander to a nuisance candidate as she downplayed his call to investigate First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos. Santander recently submitted a letter of sentiment to the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, urging it to investigate the First Lady's ties to businessman Maynard Ngu, whom former DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo earlier tagged as Senator Cheese Escudero's alleged bagman. Castro said the letter contained hearsay evidence and could amount to a fishing expedition. She also clarified that Ngu's term as Special Envoy to China for Trade and Investments expired in August and was not renewed.
Para siyang isang nuisance candidate na parang binigyan ng pera para bumili ng suka at isinabay ang pagbibigay ng letter of sentiment para dalhin sa ICI. Kung inyo makakahalubilo muli ang isang John Santander, maaari po ba niyong itanong sa kanya kung alam ba niya ang mandato ng ICI? Siya po ba'y may personal knowledge sa kanya mga sinasabi? Dahil kung walang personal knowledge, ito ay magsisilbing hearsay evidence. Kung hearsay evidence, ito po ba dapat ay binibigyan pa ng pagtutuon at seryosong konsiderasyon? Ito po ba ay isang fishing expedition lamang para siraan ang unang ginang?
House Speaker Boji D has released a copy of his Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth, or SALN, to the public. In the SALN, D disclosed ties to 4 firms, 3 in Isabela and 1 in Pasig. His net worth is not more than 74 million pesos. D also listed 16 relatives currently holding government positions. Recall that D himself said he will publicize his SALN amid public outrage over revelations of rampant corruption in government. Ombudsman Boying Remulla revealed that a former Quezon City lawmaker has expressed willingness to disclose details about alleged irregularities in flood control projects. Here's the report.
The Office of the Ombudsman will evaluate a series of complaints filed by the group United Filipino Against Crime and Corruption against Tarlac 3rd District Representative Noel Rivera, his wife Concepcion Vice Mayor Evelyn Rivera, and DPWH Tarlac 1st District Engineer Neil Farala. The complaints include plunder, graft, unexplained wealth, and violations of the Government Procurement Act, along with administrative charges for abuse of authority, grave misconduct, and serious dishonesty. The group alleges that the 3 conspired to channel nearly 600 million pesos worth of government contracts to their own company, Tarlac 3G Construction and Development Corporation. Congressman Rivera, reportedly the company's president, CEO, and general manager, allegedly acted as the contractor for 13 infrastructure projects in Tarlac since 2018. Ombudsman Boying Remulla said the case will undergo evaluation and validation of documents before a possible preliminary investigation.
I-validate lang natin yung documents kung siya talaga, kung walang pagbabago sa official documents na dapat i-contain ng isang complaint. Yun yun. Tutuloy na natin ang PI after validation.
Remulla also disclosed that a former Quezon City lawmaker has expressed willingness to share what he knows about alleged irregularities in flood control projects. Remulla said that he received a call from a friend who acted as an intermediary between him and the former lawmaker.
Nakatanggap din ako ng tawag. Isang kaibigan ko, para siyang go-between sa isang congressman from Quezon City who wants to tell all. So, we'll wait. I will work on that.
Anong tell-all? Ano daw yung sasabihin?
Yung involvement niya sa lahat na nangyayari. Tsaka kung paano kalakaran, paano nangyayari lahat yan.
Meanwhile, Remulla is set to meet with the Sandigan Bayan on October 27th to finalize the mechanics of restitution. He earlier insisted that those involved in flood control anomalies must fully return the stolen public funds if they wish to enter into a plea bargain with the government.
We want to lay down the mechanics in the Sandigan Bayan. Kasi lahat ng ganito will end up with plea bargaining. At yun ang talagang ending yan. We should seek the court's clearance para matapos yan.
Bye-bye.
And coming right up, former Senate President Frank Drilon believes that a culture of impunity is the root of all corruption happening in government. That and more when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Noon here at Morning Matters. We talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. Former Senate President Franklin Drilon expressed caution over the proposed Senate Bill 1215, which seeks to create an independent People's Commission to investigate anomalies in government infrastructure projects. According to Drilon, the Ombudsman already has the constitutional mandate to conduct such investigations, saying what the country needs is a stronger system of accountability, not more investigating bodies. But he also agreed that given the scale of corruption in public works, a temporary independent commission with broad powers may still be necessary, provided it has a sunset clause to avoid duplicating the functions of existing agencies.
Having said that, we must strengthen our institutions of democracy that would exact accountability rather than keep on adding bodies. In favor of the proposed commission, but it must be an ad hoc, it must have a sunset clause rather than perpetually having a duplication of functions.
And joining us today to tell us more about that, we have former Senate President Franklin Drilon, a veteran lawmaker and legal expert who has long championed reforms in government accountability and anti-corruption. Magandang umaga po sa inyo. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen. Thank you for having me this morning.
Okay, una-una ho, sa hearing kahapon, you said that the ICI as a body is constitutionally doubtful. What do you mean by that?
Well, okay. First, let me be clear, Gretchen. I am in favor of the ICI because of the massive corruption that we see today in our midst. It is important to emphasize this because under our Constitution, it is the Ombudsman who has primary jurisdiction over anomalies committed in government. But it doesn't mean that we cannot create bodies like the ICI, but they must only be a fact-finding body because the matter of the investigation or preliminary investigation. Preliminary investigation can be done only by the Ombudsman. The filing of cases in the Sandigan can be done only by the Ombudsman. But there is nothing in the Constitution and the laws which would prohibit the creation of the ICI in order to do fact-finding, recommend the filing of charges against those who, on the basis of evidence, may have committed infractions. So this is, that is why I said, let us have a sunset clause so that the ICI will exist only until these corruption issues are resolved and until we are able to restore our people's faith in our democracy and our watchdogs effectively. Right now, what I'm saying is that we should start strengthening the Ombudsman's office, the office of the Ombudsman and also the COA. These are our watchdog agencies. We cannot keep on creating one body after the other without regard to the size of the bureaucracy. In other words, I am in favor of adding people to the Ombudsman's office, adding courts to the Sandigan, in order that we can have a faster resolution of this mess that we find ourselves in today. What is important in my mind is that we must restore our people's faith in our democratic system, in our institutions of democracy. Right now, it is totally eroded because of the involvement of members of Congress in this mess that we are in today.
Senator, if it were to be a fact-finding commission, wouldn't it be difficult to do its job if it did not have broad powers? Given the extent and scale of the corruption we're seeing, that it leads to the higher echelons of power, paano po kaya sila sisiputin na una-una nitong mga iniimbestigahan nila kung hindi sila, kumbaga hindi mo sila bibigyan ng kapangyarihan din? And what I mean, you already mentioned fact-finding commissions in the past, the Feliciano and David commissions, and they were never given the power to prosecute. How did that turn out?
Well, Gretchen, we are bound by our Constitution. Our Constitution says the power to conduct preliminary investigation, the power to prosecute is in the Ombudsman. We can create bodies to substitute the Ombudsman by law. Our Constitution is supreme. That is the reason why our choices are limited to what the Constitution says. And that is why my proposal is to strengthen this institution of the Ombudsman under our Constitution and not and give the ICI a fixed term and a sunset clause, because we cannot have perpetually a duplication of functions. There can be duplication of functions now because what our public needs right now to restore the confidence of the public in our institutions of democracy. I repeat, we cannot perpetuate a duplication. If we want really to, if that is the desire, let us amend our Constitution. But as long as we live by our Constitution, we have no choice except to strengthen the Ombudsman as the body that exacts accountability from public officials.
So if it were to exist as a fact-finding body, what should be within its scope?
Well, the scope right now is to look at anomalies in the infrastructure program of the government. In other words, not all anomalies are being considered under the ICI. Only infrastructure programs. For example, just to clarify, for example, if there was another family, this cannot be entertained by this ICI. It has to go to the Ombudsman. Because, as I said, the Ombudsman is a constitutional body created to exact accountability. And our response to the public clamor today is try to have this committee or this ICI in order to assist in gathering evidence and recommend to the Ombudsman or to the COA certain measures that must be taken. And this is because we have a Constitution. If we want to revise this, let us revise our Constitution.
Should it at least have the power to subpoena witnesses and hold them in contempt para po mapapunta po nila itong mga tinatawag po nila?
The power of subpoena with the power to subpoena witnesses and documents is not an issue. They can have that. My problem, Gretchen, is when you hold in contempt somebody for refusing to turn over the documents, especially when they invoke the right against self-incrimination. Remember that in this particular case, this investigation will lead to filing of cases. So that unlike the hearings in Congress, where you can hold in contempt a witness who refuses to answer, you cannot do so in the case of the ICI, because the right against self-incrimination is guaranteed against our Bill of Rights. To demonstrate, Gretchen, if you will compel a witness to testify against his claims against self-incrimination, you are saying that I will hold you in detention until you testify against yourself. That is not acceptable. And there, yes, the right of the power to contempt should be given, but this the power to hold somebody in contempt to comply with the orders of the ICI must be viewed in the light of the invocation of the right against self-incrimination under our Constitution.
I guess one of the concerns of people is when you leave it to the Office of the Ombudsman, then it also is already not within public view. Unlike, we've seen the effectivity of the congressional hearings, the Senate hearings, in pushing forward the agenda of pursuing accountability. Kasi pag hindi po nakikita ng taong bayan kung ano po nangyayari, katulad nga po yung sa ICI na ngayon magla-livestream na ho sila, there is a danger of this just being forgotten, and it might end with that sunset clause that you mentioned.
Gretchen, what you are expressing is precisely a question of trust and confidence. Today, we have no trust on our institutions because of what has happened. Having said that, there is nothing wrong with, including in the law, the requirement that the ombudsman should live stream their proceedings, because that is right to information. Subject to reasonable standards, we can require by law the ombudsman to live stream his proceeding. So that there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Only my concern is you cannot remove the ombudsman in the process of exacting accountability, because that is our system under the Constitution. If we want to change that, let us change our Constitution.
I guess because for many years we haven't heard much from the Office of the Ombudsman. They haven't really been as transparent to the public, no? So that is one of the challenges for the current office. But when it comes to this Senate bill on Infrastructure Anomalies Investigation Act of 2025, or 1215, what do you make of that Independent People's Commission? Do you see that as different from the ICI, or is it just a difference of being legislated?
Well, no, there is a difference. For example, I think there is a consensus that they must have security of tenure. I mean, those who in the ICI now must have security of tenure, so that they can be independent in their judgment. Second, there is a proposal that they be given fiscal independence, meaning they do not have to request for funds, but what is appropriated is automatically released. But most important, the law will give permanence to the office without the danger of the same being abolished by effective.
So you are in favor of an Independent People's Commission?
Sorry?
So you are in favor of an Independent People's Commission?
I am in favor of an independent People's Commission. I said that yesterday in the hearing. I am in favor because of the environment today, where the corruption is so massive that I have never seen this, Gretchen, in my 34 years in government, the kind of corruption that we see today. So we must, we must show to the people that we are capable of addressing this, and the mechanism of the ICI is one way of doing it. But on a longer term basis, I push for the for the strengthening of institutions, the ombudsman in particular.
Correct.
Provide them more funds, provide them more personnel, and I keep on reading in media that the present ombudsman has expressed concerns over the appointments done by the previous ombudsman.
About 200.
So again, Gretchen, the office is only as good as the appointee that you make under that office.
Okay, but what would be the difference of that Independent People's Commission with the ICI in terms of powers? Ito po ba, tingin nyo dapat fact-finding lang din?
Well, whatever powers we grant to the ICI or to its successor must be within the framework of our Constitution. That's all I'm saying. I repeat, whatever powers we give to the ICI must be within the framework of the Constitution. Example, Gretchen, we cannot authorize the ICI to prosecute cases before the Sandigan Bayan. Every lawyer will tell you that. We cannot grant that power to prosecute. We cannot grant the power to contempt in case the witness will say, I invoke my right against self-incrimination. Because because if you set that aside, the ICI can deprive a person of liberty for not saying that I am guilty. So these are things which we must learn. Unfortunately, we have this for order in society, but I also lay the blame on the appointments made, because I will repeat, an institution can only be as good as the people who runs it. No matter what we do, if the appointing authority appoints a bum or a crook in any position, no matter how good the structure is, the system will collapse.
Which leads me to the question of why not have another body nga po, no, to serve as checks and balances for the office of the ombudsman, because if it is dependent and it is only as good as its appointees, then you risk having another, 6 years or more, or 7 years rather, na hindi po naiimbestigahan ito. And as we say, justice delayed is justice denied. Why give such or leave such a huge responsibility to only one office?
Well, Gretchen, I ask you back, who will, under that theory, you must have a supervisor over the supervisor of the ombudsman, and so forth and so on. Wala na pong katapusan yan. There are remedies available, as in, for example, for the ombudsman, he is subject to impeachment. In fact, there were cases in the past where the ombudsman was threatened with impeachment, and this is a remedy provided under our Constitution. We cannot just put supervisory bodies over everybody, because there will be no end to it. And our leaders are politically responsible if they make errors or errors in judgment, like appointing a crook in the office of the ombudsman. Then he or she is responsible for that, and can be subject to impeachment, for example.
Correct.
Or they can be booted out of office in the next election.
However, impeachment is also a political exercise that goes through the House. Kaya medyo mahirap po yan, lalo-lalo na kung sila po yung nakataya. But another question, you have said this time and time again, you have never seen corruption of this magnitude in 34 years that you've been in public service. Why? What was the level of corruption that you saw back in your time? Ano po ba yung, siyempre may comparison po yan kung ganito po ay nakakabahala na. Ano ba yung dati?
Sen, the most recent is Parmali. But it is bad. Parmali was bad. But in this particular case, in the particular case of the infrastructure best, it would appear like Congress or members of Congress are involved. And the extent is that it is almost nationwide in terms of the corrupt practices. There were anomalies in the past. As I said, Parmali is the most recent. You recall the North Rail issue, recall the ZTE issue, you recall the PDAF issue. This doesn't compare to what we see today.
In terms of amounts?
In terms of amounts. And in terms of number of people involved or suspected to be involved.
But hasn't this been in place for a long time? Corruption within the DPWH, within our agencies. And during your time as Senate President, wala po ba itong BICAM at yung small committee?
Well, there are, but Gretchen, that brings to mind the culture of impunity that we see today. People are no longer afraid of violating the law because they feel that nobody gets punished anyway. So they will steal money from the government and get away with it. And that's what I call the culture of impunity. And how did this come about? To me, it came about because of the lack of respect for the rule of law. Hindi na po takot na makulong, kaya po nagnanakaw na lang. So this is one of the things which we must reform.
The BICAM is only supposed to reconcile the House and the Senate versions. Meron po ba tayong batas that restricts the role of the BICAM to only that function, or does it really have broad powers to be able to make sweeping changes and magkaroon po ng mga insertions coming from nowhere?
This has already been decided by the Supreme Court. The BICAM can propose new items. Gretchen, just to clarify, an insertion is an amendment. It is called
correct.
an amendment in ordinary legislation. In the national budget, it's called an insertion, which has acquired such a bad name. But at bottom, these are both amendments. To say that the BICAM cannot, in the process of reconciling, cannot decide on new items is a limitation on the plenary power of the members of the representatives of the people to enact laws. And the Supreme Court, let me emphasize, has already ruled that the powers of the Bicameral Conference Committee is plenary. They can propose new items in reconciliation of the differences between the House and the Senate version.
And going to the amendments that were done in the past budgets, yung ilan sa mga question po doon, yung unprogrammed appropriations, pati yung paglilipat ng mga budget from I think the Department of Education and Health going to the DPWH, mas malaki po yung budget noon. If you compare the amendments done during your time and this time, would you call it also egregious?
The amendments today, and the amendments that were proposed in the past, you would consider as petty cash if you look at the extent of the insertion that we see today. The corruption is massive, and it involves massive participation by the Congress and certain members in the executive branch. Hindi naman po pwede na Kongreso lang ito because in our system, the power to authorize expenditure is in Congress, but the power to release the funds is in the President upon the recommendation of the Department of Budget and Management. So, I repeat, the power to authorize is with Congress, but the power to disburse is with the executive. Even if we do all kinds of authorizations in Congress, if the executive will not release, there is nothing you can do because that is part of our system, and therefore the remedies are: you impeach the president, you file charges against the congressmen and the senators, and you must have the agency that will exact compliance strengthened and independent.
But so the executive is accountable if we follow that train of thought. Dito po sa BICAM, how is it possible that nakalusot po yung budget with the House Speaker saying wala daw siya sa BICAM? Hindi po ba dapat permado po ng lahat ng leaders ng House at ng Senate po yan? How does the BICAM really work? Because if nakakalusot po na hindi lang umatin o hindi pumirma, paano po pumapasa po yun? Ilang tao lang po ba yung dapat pumirma doon?
Gretchen, ang budget literally is about 6 inches high, thousands of entries. I don't know, 25, 40,000 entries. It is simply impossible for the members of Congress to go over it line by line. But it doesn't mean that there is no check and balance. The Department of Budget and Management knows this budget from birth. In other words, at the start of the conceptualization of the budget, alam po ng DBM yan. When the Congress authorizes expenditure of the funds and inserts expenditures which are not in the original President's budget, alam po ng DBM yan. After the BICAM report is submitted, both chambers have the right to disapprove the BICAM report. After the BICAM report is approved and General Appropriations Bill, the President has the right to exercise line item veto, meaning that the President can veto items of appropriation which are not consistent with its national policy or which is tainted with corruption. So there are checks and balance all over the place. It's just the failure of the people manning the system that this system has failed.
Checks and balances that have not worked and have allowed these kinds of budgets to pass. Finally, what do you make of this proposal by former Associate Justice Adolf Ascuna to have some sort of a writ of quitam, where a private person can sue on behalf of government for violations, acting as a whistleblower of some sorts, and speaking on fraud committed by companies and individuals. I mean, yung writ of quitam kasi allows an ordinary person to be a whistleblower and to somehow get a reward after. Strengthening what people can do. Because sa ngayon, ano po ba yung nagiging proseso? Is this all but left to government to handle? What is within the power of the people here, ordinary citizen?
Well, firstly, I respect my good friend Justice Adolf Ascuna. Unfortunately, I have not read in detail what he proposes, and therefore, but in general, as a general concept, people should have the right to raise these anomalous transactions in complaints before the ombudsman and in the courts. In fact, one of the proposals in this ICI charter pending in the Senate is that you must exempt from liability the people who would work on exposing these anomalies because of the danger of the disincentive if one is sued for abuse of authority by those you charge, you are helpless. So one of the proposals is to strengthen the process is to exempt the members of the commission from liability for actions that they have done. Gretchen, I can talk out of personal experience. When I was assisting President Aquino during the coup d'etats and filing cases as Secretary of Justice, I was sued for damages for abuse of authority. So there is really a need to protect our whistleblowers, our officials exacting accountability for frivolous suits. The members of the Monetary Board faces a lot of cases because of the closure of the bank for abuse of authority. That is why in the charter of the Banco Central, the members of the Monetary Board are shielded from such cases. So there are ways of doing it. But I repeat, at bottom, Gretchen, it is the people who would man the system to make the system workable. If you appoint a crook, you will have a crooked system.
We hope to make government more efficient and effective in its role and not just to add layers of bureaucracy, but also at the same time, we hope to somehow make the system a lot better. And we hope to find solutions for that in the meantime. Maraming salamat po sa inyo for your time today and for weighing in on with us here at Morning Matters. We have former Senate President Franklin Drilon.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Don't go away. We'll continue our conversation about the massive corruption in government with People's Budget Coalition co-convener Ken Abante. Morning Matters will be back after a quick break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. The People's Budget Coalition has expressed support for the proposed Independent People's Commission bill, emphasizing the urgent need to address systemic corruption in government projects. Now, speaking at the Senate, Kenneth Abante, co-convener of the coalition, highlighted how billions intended for flood control have been misused, leaving communities vulnerable during calamities like severe tropical storm Christine in Bicol. He urged the Senate to empower the Independent People's Commission with fiscal autonomy, contempt powers, and transparent operations to prevent further abuse of public funds. The coalition also called for stricter scrutiny of congressional insertions on program appropriations and patronage-based programs. And joining us now, we have People's Budget Coalition co-convener Kenneth Abante. Magandang umaga sa iyo. Thank you for joining us again here in Morning Matters.
Hello, good morning, Gretch, and good morning to our viewers.
Ken, sigurado ako nakikinig ka kanina, no? Ito yung yung opinion ni former Senator Franklin Drilon tungkol dito sa ICI, pati na rin sa Independent People's Commission. Do you agree that this should just be a fact-finding body and the Office of the Ombudsman should be strengthened instead?
Yeah, I agree with the Senate President in terms of, the Constitution being the final a criterion of whether the Independent People's Commission powers which of the powers will be granted to the Independent People's Commission. Pero yung nakikita po namin, Gretch, ay mas functional, no? Nasabi na po natin at nakita na natin na sninub ni Diskaya ang Independent Commission ngayon kasi walang contempt powers ang Independent Commission. So gusto natin na maiwasan ito in the future. Kailangan din yung tinatawag nating fiscal autonomy na pwede rin naman under the Constitution, and finally to make the hearings transparent to build trust with our people.
And the other proposal was to have the Office of the Ombudsman live stream its hearings. Pero from your end, ano ba yung naging balakid in the past years when it comes to seeking accountability? You've been bringing up, your group has been bringing up all sorts of issues with the budget, and it's only now that it's actually getting its momentum. How should the Office of the Ombudsman have some sort of checks and balances, and how should the Independent People's Commission work? You were there yesterday at the Senate Committee hearing. Ano yung naiisip mo na set up dito, no, para magkaroon ng mas malakas na boses ang taong bayan?
Right. I think the ombudsman should do its constitutional duty to hold people to account, no. And then part of the reason why we think the Independent People's Commission is necessary was because the previous ombudsman was not able to perform his task properly according to the Constitution, and even weakening a lot of the checks that are important for prevention of corruption. So for example, weakening the SALN transparency or the statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth, which made it quite difficult to track unexplained wealth. The weakening of lifestyle checks, etc. There are existing tools that the ombudsman can use in order to prevent corruption, but these were not properly used as tools. I am not an expert in the justice system. I defer to the Senate President on these matters. But there are just key matters and tools that the ombudsman can use within the framework of the Constitution. And part nga po niyan, yung ensuring that the cases that are filed with the judiciary are tracked. No, I was looking at I was listening to Representative Chel Jokno's interview the other day at sinasabi niya na may mga kaso filed before the Sandigan Bayan na 40 years old na at hindi pa rin nare-resolve. So I think that's that type of transparency both with the ombudsman and with the judiciary is critical to ensuring that our people people's trust in the justice system is not eroded. Unfortunately, that has been the case.
But you are not an expert in the justice system, but you are with the budget as a former Department of Finance employee. You took a look at these Sumbong sa Pangulo website at nabanggit mo na 547 billion lamang yung nandito. What did you see? What is still missing here?
Yeah, so itong 547 billion pesos in flood control projects, ito yung mga nakapost sa Sumbong sa Pangulo website coming from years 2018 to 2025. Kaya lang kapag ikumpara natin siya, Gretch, sa budget ng flood control over that same time period, around 1.2 trillion yung total flood control budget. So, nananawagan po tayo at nanawagan tayo ng transparency sa Pangulo at sa Department of Public Works and Highways para ipaliwanag kung ano yung nangyari dito sa kalahati na ito. Na kumpleto ba ito? Ito ba ay ghost? Ito ba ay half ghost? At importante po na malaman ng taong bayan kung ano yan. No? The other way to be able to cross-check is that thankfully, career servants from the PhilJEPs, yun yung Philippine Electronic Government Procurement System, and the Procurement Service DBM has released 2 days ago or 3 days ago the list of awarded contracts posted on the PhilJEPs since the year 2000, Gretch. These are 5 million contracts worth around 15 trillion pesos. So kaka-release lang yan. And what our volunteers are doing in the civic tech movement, yung mga nerds po who are analyzing the budget, is to check kung ano dito yung excluded from the Sumbong sa Pangulo website. So very soon, Gretch, we'll just need to double check. We have initial figures, but we want to be confident in the figures that we'll release to the public. Pero definitely may mga kontrata na hindi nilagay sa Sumbong sa Pangulo website.
So kalahati lang yung nakikita natin dito sa website na ito. It's good that you're looking at this. And speaking of numbers, you also raised that there is still 256 billion of pork patronage. Tama po ba? Dito sa current HGAB, anong nakita ninyo?
Yes, so that's at least, Gretch, 256 billion in pork and patronage-based and opaque projects that are prone to corruption. No? Kapag sinasabi po naming pork, ito po ay yung mga programa na kailangan pang manlimos ng ating mga kababayan sa politiko bago natin ito makuha. Pero karapatan naman talaga natin itong makuha. No, ang cancer po ng pork na ito ay parang kumalat na po sa iba-ibang mga ahensya. Magbibigay po ako ng halimbawa. Dati po, 'di ba, yung sa Department of Social Welfare and Development, merong maayos na listahan ang 4Ps or Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program. Kaya lang yung ginawa po over the past years ay binawasan ito ng 50 billion pesos last year at nilagay sa AIX at AKAP na kung saan kontrolado ng kongresista ng kung sino yung makakuha, which is according to the Constitution and the Supreme Court ruling on pork, the pork barrel ruling ay hindi ito pwede kasi this is intervention post-enactment of the budget. So, yung guarantee letter system po sa tingin namin ay hindi po naaayon sa saligang batas or unconstitutional. Yung sinasabi ko, Gretch, nag-spread yung cancer na ito ng pork and patronage and corruption sa iba-ibang mga ahensya, sa Department of Health, dapat sa PhilHealth, pero napupunta sa isang programa na ang tawag ay MAIFIP, Medical Assistance to Indigent and Financially Incapacitated Patients. Last year, PhilHealth, zinero yung budget ng PhilHealth at ito ay napunta sa guarantee letter system ng MAIFIP kung saan kailangan mong manlimos sa kongresista para makuha mo yung discount at discount mo sa ospital. Marami pang ibang halimbawa, Gretch, tulad ng sa Commission on Higher Education. At ito ay tulad ng tulong-dunong program. 'Di ba dapat libre ang kolehiyo para sa lahat? Ngayon nagkakaroon na rin ng paglalago ng tumor na ito ng cancer within the CHED budget na kung saan kontrolado rin ng kongresista ang listahan. Sa Department of Labor and Employment merong tupad, no? Meron ding mga confidential and intelligence funds and NTFL CAC support to barangays na fina-flag kami. Along with the growth in the Department of Agriculture budget's farm-to-market roads and the presidential assistance to farmers and fisher folk. All in all, around 256 billion pesos yung kailangang linisin at kailangang ilagay sa tunay na rules-based social protection programs.
Ito yung puro ayuda. Oo.
Wala namang masama sa ayuda, Gretch, no, at nangangailangan naman talaga ang ating mga kababayan, no, ng tulong. Pero yung tulong sana ay hindi at the expense of the dignity of our people. Dapat po rights-based and rules-based ang ating social protection programs. Hindi po yung namamalimos at pork-laden, which is what we're seeing in the current House version of the budget.
Nabanggit mo rin that we're only seeing a minuscule amount here with the flood control budgets. Saan pa kayo nakakita ng insertion?
So, ito, Gretch, we were able to study insertions of the Department of Public Works and Highways over the past 20 years. In terms of accounting, comparable accounting, meron kami from 2018 to 2025. Yung sinasabi po namin, flood control projects are just the tip of the iceberg or just a drop in the bucket. Unfortunately, Gretch, kasi sa DPWH budget, 828 billion pesos yung secret congressional insertions to the convergence and special support programs. I agree with Senator Drilon that an insertion is an amendment. But what I make a distinction on is the practice of abusive and secret congressional insertions, mga last-minute insertions in the BICAM na hindi naman talaga napagdebatihan and there are claims that these insertions are proposed by contractors and wala naman talaga sa plano, sa kabuuang plano ng 18 major river basin master plans na dapat talaga ay magkaroon ng disiplina, no? So yung mga convergence and special support programs, ano pong gustong sabihin nito? Ito po ay mga programa na kung saan may dalawang ahensya na nagko-converge o nagko-collaborate. Halimbawa, ang Department of Public Works and Highways and the Department of Tourism for tourism roads. So the Transportation Department with the roads leading to airports and seaports. The Department of Education in terms of classrooms. At kung ano pa yung may in-insert din sila mga flood control projects dyan. So yan,
And how
Gretch,
how much goes to this? Oo.
The insertions were 828 billion. Insertions pa lang yan,
Wow.
hindi pa yung kabuuang budget. Pero sa tingin po namin, nandito talaga yung karamihan sa mga iba pang prone na kailangan i-prioritize ng Independent Commission or ng Independent People's Commission kasi ito po yung mga risky transactions na nakikita ng
So when you say
People's
last
Budget.
minute insertion ito, sa BICAM ba ito lumabas?
Right. Karamihan sa mga insertions na ito, very last minute, not properly scrutinized. And one of the things that we discovered, Gretch, in our 20-year study of the Department of Public Works and Highways budget is that it was a very interesting phenomenon that during the time of Secretary Babe Singson was now a member of the Independent Commission, no, napakaliit lang yung percentage ng insertions to the DPWH budget. I think hanggang mga 2% lang. No, the reason why they were able to control those insertions to the DPWH budget was because they said kung mag-i-insert man ang mga kongresista, dapat naaayon siya sa national plans, sa National Highway Plan, sa National sa River Basin Master Plans. At kung wala doon, hindi nila pwedeng i-insert. 'Di ba? It's like roads leading to nowhere, bridges leading to nowhere, flood control structures that are really sometimes even make floods worse. 'Di ba? Kung wala sa plano, dapat alisin. And the president, the Senate President writes that the president should line item veto all of the projects that are not part of this plan. So the discipline is the DPWH has a plan. Any insertions should be part of that plan. And they shouldn't
That's why
be
it was kept to
overpriced.
2%. Okay.
Right.
Sabi mo nga, no, kahapon din sa Senate Committee hearing na 700 billion lamang yung kinakailangan. Kung natupad itong Major River Basins Master Plan, which is well within those secret congressional insertions that you mentioned, na 828 billion, yung masakit ay pwede na siya ng mapatupad yun in full scale. No? But what do you think or how do you assess the 243 billion in unprogrammed appropriations still? Do you agree with Congress that having the unprogrammed appropriations is really inevitable at kailangan natin yan, lalong-lalo na for the foreign-assisted projects, pati na rin doon sa mga kalamidad na hindi natin inaasahan o alam kung ano yung extent ng damage? Don't we have enough of these contingency funds?
I've changed my mind about this, Gretch, after debating with some other public finance experts. Dati sinasabi ko na yung foreign assisted project is ang legitimate use ng unprogrammed appropriations. I've changed my mind. I think the entire unprogrammed appropriations as a concept should be abolished. And because, for example, yung nasasabing mga uses, yung mga rebuttals to the abolition, sinasabi nila na dapat yung foreign assisted projects nandyan. Actually, putting foreign-assisted projects in the unprogrammed appropriations is a relatively new phenomenon. In fact, in 2012, around 1 billion lang ito. No? So, normally, both yung foreign loan and the government counterpart, yung binabayad ng Pilipinas para dun sa loan, normally nilalagay yan pareho sa programmed appropriations. Hindi naman talaga sa UA. So hindi po totoo na kailangan siya absolutely for foreign assisted projects to fly. No, that's not true. The second thing was what we heard from PALA spokesperson Claire Castro and Speaker Boji D, na sinasabi nila, unprogrammed yan kasi may mga kalamidad, 'di ba? Hindi mo mapaprogram 'yan. But actually, there are already instruments and funds within the programmed appropriations tulad ng contingent fund, tulad ng National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund, tulad ng Quick Response Funds that are already part of our contingency planning, no, for the budget. So meaning, even within the programmed appropriations, the funding for unexpected events and calamities can actually already be funded. Kasi isipin mo, Gretch, di ba? Yung unprogrammed appropriation, magagamit lang siya kapag may extra revenues yung gobyerno. No? Kung magkaroon ka ng calamity tapos maghahanap ka pa ng extrang pondo, hindi mo siya ma-release kaagad. Kaya kailangan mo siyang ilagay sa programmed appropriation.
Doesn't fit into that specification. Okay.
Right.
Lastly, you said you had in mind reforms already for the budget process. Can we hear some of the proposed reforms?
Sure. And allow me to illustrate, Gretch, tungkol dun sa each of the most critical vulnerabilities in each stage of the budget process. No, unahin natin, so may 4 na stages ang budget process: preparation, legislation, execution, at accountability. Sa budget preparation, pinaka-naabuso ang mismong kawalan ng plano. So mahalaga na magkaroon ng plano, accessible to the public. Dapat na vet siya ng mga scientists and a multi-sectoral body. Actually, vets the Department of Public Works and Highways and agency budgets before it becomes the National Expenditure Program. No? Similar doon sa panahon ni Sec. Babe Singson. 'Di ba? May plano, no? Hindi ka pwedeng mag-insert kung wala sa plano. 'Di ba? So kasi napag-aralan na 'yon, no? Hindi pwedeng hindi napag-aralan yung ipapasok doon sa plano. So yun yung pinakamahalagang reforma sa paghahanda ng budget ng Department of Public Works and Highways. And we're ready to work with Secretary Dizon on this. We worked together on the transportation budget before, no? The second, Gretch, is in legislation. Medyo napag-usapan na natin to. Yung pinaka-vulnerable dito sa legislation process ay yung secret congressional insertions that have been abused, especially in the Bicameral Conference Committee. May dalawang reforma yan, Gretch. Yung una, yung gawing bukas yung BICAM. No? Hindi lang live streaming, kundi yung pagbibigay sa mga civil society organizations ng tunay na seat at the table at bigyan ng resource person status yung mga civil society organizations at bigyan ng tamang impormasyon at magkaroon ng open budget transparency server para mas mapadali yung pagkumpara sa iba-ibang mga line items at kung paano siya nag-evolve throughout the budget process. Ikukwento ko lang, Gretch, no? Every time we receive a new version of the budget, we need to comb through and encode through 1,000 pages of a PDF file. So imaginein mo na lang, no, hindi siya makatao na proseso, no? So it also increases the barrier for ordinary citizens to understand what's there. So yung sinasabi namin, Gretch, at nakagawa na yung volunteers namin from the bettergov.ph ng actual pilot open
Nakita ko nga yun, yung
budget transparency server.
Oo. Now, actually, these are good proposals. Medyo wala na tayong oras. We'd love to hear the other proposals when you go back to the committee hearing. We hope to have you and hear from you again. No? But in the meantime, maraming salamat. Keep up the good work on your end, and we certainly need your eyes on this as we push the ball and continue to make sure that this doesn't die down just as the memories of Filipinos. Maraming salamat sa iyong oras for today. We have People's Budget Coalition co-convener Kenneth Abante joining us on Morning Matters today.
Maraming salamat, Gretch, at alang-alang sa lahat ng mga biktima ng severe tropical storm Christine. Hindi namin to tatantanan.
Ganda pakinggan yan. Maraming salamat. That wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen No. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.